Hello, welcome back to Furious Driving, back in the garage, but only briefly, because I want to share something rather fun and exciting with you. Now, last time you saw this thing on the channel, the last video in fact, it was lit up, but the light is not plugged in today because I'm about to plug in something else. And the last time you saw this Sinclair rubber key Spectrum 48K, it was when I was introducing the Sinclair C5. You know, I've got a lot of 1985 Sinclair goodness going on around the house. And I've actually owned this thing for many years. I bought it on a market stall for a £5. So I was quite chuffed with that because it's actually in amazingly good condition. But I've never plugged it in. Anyway, it turns out I was very lucky I hadn't plugged it in because there's one of my viewers called Jay's Vintage Junk. I'll put a link down in the description below because he contacted me, says, I restore vintage electronics. Would you like me to have a look at that before you risk powering it up? Just, yes, please. And turned out it needed a fair little amount of work. It's generally in amazing condition, but a lot of the components or capacitors and things, they get to the point where they will actually explode if you plug the thing in and then just render the whole thing useless. And so he's replaced all of them. He's replaced the keyboard membrane, which is another thing which fails with time, basically. But externally, it's still in fantastic condition. He also, I think he rebuilt the power supply unit and the cable was dangling off it. So let's try and plug this thing in and see what happens. Hey, 1982 Sinclair Research Limited. How good is that? If you'd like to see what it took to get a, well, 1980, I think it's 85 he said, working, head over to the link in the description where you can see Jay actually stripping the thing down, soldering new parts to the board. Quite incredible stuff really if you, well, doesn't know one end from a soldering iron from the other. Now, if I can remember how you load a game on a Sinclair Spectrum. Where's the load button? J, load. Enter, no. Load quote, isn't it, from memory? Hang on. So it's J for load, then symbol shift, P for quote, and then we'll find, did me a CD of tracks actually, so let's try and find track 6 on this thing. Hopefully the CD will be a lot easier to use than the old cassette deck. Ah, right, now I've got a problem with this TV in that it's only got composite input, it's not got single channel input, so I think I'm only seeing one of the 3 colour channels on the screen, so I might not see the full 12 colour glory of the Spectrum. I'm not sure this is actually working. Oh, that's a bit of a shame. Well, that's a bit of a shame. I'm going to have to go find a different CD player because this one seems to be kind of stopping and starting and stopping and starting, which the Sinclair will not be enjoying at all. Right, I'm back with a plan B. I've got a composite to SCART adapter and I've got an old iPod. Who says having decades worth of junk electronics in the loft is a waste of space? Ha! Who's laughing now? Let's try and remember how to do this again. So, load, quote, enter. Ah, yeah, there we go. And let's get C5 Clive. There we go. Oh, I've got the wrong program playing. Okay. Bubble. I wasn't after bubble. There we go, that's better. I've got my labelling mixed up. So it was under Chucky Egg on the iPod. So here we have noughties, late noughties technology meets mid-80s technology with probably about 2010s technology. It's probably about 5 or 10 minutes worth of, I think 6 minutes of loading time on this. C5 Clive is charging. I wonder how long it took to actually charge up a Sinclair C5 back in the day. I don't know if you're hearing the sound, but this is the sound of my childhood right here. We are here. This will be my first drive in a Sinclair C5 and also my first drive of a Spectrum since probably the mid to late 80s. Right, I think I'll set learner driver. Oh crikey, how's this? I didn't set the keys, oh damn. I should have set the keys first. Okay, Q&A. Oh, I've gone over the top, okay. Get the battery, yes, phew. Let's not go over the top or hit the tree. Haha. Okay, what do I do here? One battery left. Is there a jump command here? Is there a jump? I have to check what the keys are already, don't I? Game over. Okay, S to stop. Okay, so that was actually probably fairly lifelike and accurate in that I crashed a couple of times and then went underneath the car. So that's probably exactly what will happen with my actual Sinclair C5. So I'm astonished how realistic they managed to make a Spectrum game back in 1985. That's quite impressive. Wow, thanks Jay, this is really cool. I'm actually going to bring this indoors and put it in the living room because it's blooming freezing out here, and then I can actually play some proper 1980s games and relive our childhoods on this machine in the living room. That's really cool. Right, now let's go and do some stuff on an actual C5. Well, back to reality with a bump. The actual C5 is not going anywhere. It's significantly less mobile than the virtual version, although it's probably the only virtual version of a Sinclair C5 you'll ever see. Right, so luckily though, good news in terms of making this thing maybe mobile in the not too distant future is this box, which has turned up from, I'm thinking probably China, because that's what the language on these stickers is primarily in. I don't speak a lot of Chinese, but thankfully there are some translations on these many little tails. For example, derailleur, which I'm guessing that's like the gears on a bike normally, isn't it? We've got indicator, which currently not an issue. Brakes, could do with some better brakes. Sport, I think we've got enough sport as it is. Charging port, that could be quite handy. Brake, again, or brake twice there. Power locks, probably won't use those ones. Stop anyone running away with it, lifting up and carrying away. And of course, most importantly, this yellow and black one, which would go to a motor feed, and this one, which goes to a battery, which I have so far neglected to purchase. But this thing is basically a speed controller, a control unit. This is one of the big things that's missing from my C5. Someone took it out, and an old 1980s, fairly crude Gubbins is no longer here. So this modern, cutting-edge 21st century item now is, and just look how tiny that is, and all the functions it can do, and the voltage it can handle is probably quite a lot. In addition to that, we've also got handlebars. So this one is just a dummy one, does nothing. This one though is actually got wires on it. It's got ignition locks on it, so no one again can drive it away or lift it up and carry it away. It does actually have like a proper motorbike styley acceleratory grip there, which is cool. It does also put an LED on this. I'm not quite sure what that will say. Maybe the power readout. I can't imagine enough speed because there's no speed sensor anywhere. Maybe we'll figure this out later on. But this does have power and something else. I forget what the three coloured pigtails was there. That's a derailleur, so I'm guessing that's probably some kind of bad translation. Speed control, I'm going to imagine, perhaps. I don't know. Anywho, that is a nice upgrade on the handlebars. But most importantly, in this little polystyrene packaging, which weighs an absolute ton. Oh, here we go. This is, I'm sure you're guessing, a fairly chunky motor, which if we read the label on the side of it says 3000 RPM, which is fast, 36 volts, which is a lot, and significantly 1000 watts, which is also what it says, luckily, on there. The big question is, does it actually fit into the Sinclair? Why am I doing this huddled into the corner of a garage? Because it's raining again. Right, this is where the original Sinclair motor would have sat, and it's a little bit of clamping possibility, but not a lot. Let's see if this can actually go in there. Well, it fits in, and there's a little bit of leeway. So basically what I need to be doing is figuring some way of clamping that a little bit tighter. I guess just some kind of clamp band would do the trick. Crack it, it's so heavy. Yeah, some kind of wrapping around that, which I could then clamp. This does have clamping, there's a clamp bolt on the back of that. So if I were to just put some kind of steadying, gripping substance inside there. So my choice here is either find some way of gripping the motor a little bit tighter in the Sinclair bracket, which I'll be honest doesn't look that strong, but might do for a little while, or make a whole new bracket out of something. Oops. Not really sure what I would make it out of, to be perfectly honest. 3D print something, but that's quite complicated. make something out of metal. I think maybe going for like a, I don't know, something grippy like a old leather belt or something might do the trick, just to hold it steadily in place. How have I managed to get it dirty by just letting it on the floor in the last 20 seconds? There's nothing on the frame of the motor itself to actually give it any kind of grip, so it just has to be grasped tightly by the clamping action of that plastic Sinclair mount. So I think that'd be the easiest thing to do. Secondly, I have to find some way of transmitting the drive from the motor itself to the axle. Now if you see that little knurled, splined thing on the axle itself, normally there'll be a plastic drive wheel attached to that, which there currently isn't. So the choice I've got to make is, do I go for a gear wheel, which will fit onto that, and then have a chain in between the two, or go as Sinclair intended with the drive wheel and fit a similar drive wheel up to the motor, which might actually be better and certainly more forgiving, less jolt in the transmission. So I need some drive wheels. Okay, that's one thing to find. Again, before I tip this thing onto its wheels, have a look on the inside of the cabin. People mentioned on the last video that the steering rod that I've made, I didn't put lock nuts on either end of it. When I was thinking about it and planning it, I actually had planned to do that. But the thing was, I realised whilst I was installing it, this threads in and out of these two, what do you call them, ball joints. So as it threads out of one, it threads into the other. And it doesn't actually have enough leeway, extension room, to thread all the way out of either one. As it comes out of one, it goes into the other. So I've not got any kind of tracking changes to be made by doing this, because as I say, as it threads out of one, it threads into the other, so it always stays the same length, and it can't actually unscrew from the pair of them, so it doesn't make any odds. And also there was a little square of grease kind of pre-installed in these, because people sort of mentioned I should add some grease into them, but I say they were weirdly pre-greased, which is very handy. So, easy one first of all. Off comes the grip, which was not a functional grip previously. There's a little grub screw in there, but I didn't bring any Allen keys, so that might, yeah, will just fit on there. That will just go in there without the grub screw in the way. That would be mounting on there. I've got a little bit of distance to travel with this power lead to the motor, because that's the only motor lead that I need to be putting through outside the chassis. Everything else can be tucked away safely out of the weather inside it, but there's no actual holes. So once I've figured out where I'm going to put everything inside there, I am going to have to drill a hole, probably up here somewhere, enlarge this the original hole, which has got three very, very small wires, which are not going to cut it with. I mean, look at the size of the power lead to the motor from the original wiring and the power lead to the new wiring. That's quite a significant difference in, well, the amount of current that's going to be carrying. But yeah, I'll enlarge that hole, which sits up underneath the seat. You can't really see it. And I think I'll have to hide the battery in that same spot as well. Let's just pull this thing out a minute. Oh, blimey. That is so heavy. So here's that motor mount in a bit more detail. It's basically only held down by this clamp here. This one clamping bolt. Currently it's a bit loose, but even with it as tight as it will go, that is loose on the motor. But I think if we go with, I'm going to say like a strip of leather or something, because that's fairly grippy, but also gives us a little bit of protection for the systems as well, because if it's held in 100% rock solid and you get like a jolt, a surge of power, you could damage the transmission bits, the belts, the wheels, that kind of stuff. So up here behind the original power switch is where that power lead goes through. I think we'll mount our control unit up here, out of the way, screw it onto this rear bulkhead, I guess you call it. That will give us access to the motor, and the battery can live either here or on the other side of the same part, in the other footwell. So I think we're getting ourselves a bit of a plan here. And it's also conveniently close to the handlebar. So the wiring always switches just here. One was just a purely binary on-off accelerator switch, and the other one, I think someone said was a horn. So it could actually even run alongside the brake cables and go down underneath the chassis and then back out in again, so you can completely hide it. So yeah, there's a few possibilities for making it look neat and tidy just there. So what did all of this Chinese knockoff electronic goodness actually cost? Well, from Amazon it was a total of £142 delivered, which is pretty cheap really, considering if I was going to go with original genuine Sinclair stuff, I would be looking at that kind of amount just for the gearbox or just for the motor. But most of the parts are pretty expensive. Even the red tail light's 75 quid for an unbroken one. So yeah, this is actually a lot cheaper to go with far more power than it would have been to stick with genuine original Sinclair components. Looking around for a 36 volt battery that's compatible with all of this lot, I think with that plug there. I'm going to be looking at about £50 to £70. Looking around online again, there's lots more stuff to hunt around for. Trying to remember what goes where and how it all goes together. There we go. That's how it will all hook up. That's the motor connected. That will then go down to a battery, and pretty much good to go with those two plugged in. This is a fairly simple installation. But the main thing that I'm going to struggle with at this point, whoops, I shouldn't have connected that, is going to be figuring out how to connect that drive to that axle. I think it's going to have to be a drive belt. So I'm going to look into finding the correct drive wheel that sits on the Sinclair motor and the Sinclair drive wheel that sits on the axle, and then the Sinclair drive belt. And with those three things, I should be able to get there. But I will also be investigating other drive systems as well, so I can see what I can find to try and figure out what I need. It's not anything too difficult or too insurmountable. The big advantage if I go with a Sinclair drive wheel for both ends is I can buy a Sinclair drive belt because it's the right length. There's no guessing and trying to make millimetres shorter or longer, get a guesswork happen, because that's where it's all going to go wrong, and I'm going to get one that's too short or too long. Ignore the dog barking in the background. This has been a fairly short video just to sort of give you an update in the Sinclair C5 project, just so you don't think I've forgotten it, because I had to wait a few weeks for those components to arrive all the way from China. Well, assuming it's China because that's what it says in the box. But they are now here. I've now got potentially the cheapest EV upgrade you've ever seen. But upgrade? Yeah, it's an upgrade, not conversion, so yes, I'll stick with upgrade. So next time we feature this vehicle, because I don't know what else to call it, I'll just stick with the vehicle, I will have found some drive devices so we can make the motor transmit its power to the wheel, and maybe even bought a battery for it as well. So this is going to be my £200 functioning, high-speed, probably dangerous Sinclair EV. Yeah, I think that's about it really. So yes, take away from this, I've got electronic components, I'm now looking for drive components. Yeah, are we happy with that? I think so. Right, sorry it's a short video, but finding stuff for this particular build is interesting, and I didn't want you to think I'd forgotten about it. So it's a very short update, just to say it's still happening. And I should probably look at doing the brakes as well, because the one functioning, semi-functioning little brake on the front is all there is on this at the moment that works, and that's not the best. Right, thanks for watching. Join me again soon. Hit the bell notification to find out when more of this stupid project happens.